I'm Carmen. We wanted to talk to you guys about neurospeculative Afrofeminism, but also about kind of our process and the work, the deep work that we're trying to do in order to subvert some of the structural systems that exist that are, that we're trying.
We wanted to do this in a way that we kind of deconstruct our design thinking and our process. A lot of people ask us how we made this experience, what drove us to do that, and we thought it would be a great opportunity to do that deconstruction here with this audience. So, yeah, we have it.
So we have, when we were creating this project, we were looking at past projects that we really admired, and we decided to come up with our own pipeline, which started with looking at what the problems that we encounter as designers and as educators, trying to do a design intervention inside the fields that we work in, and then creating a call to action to other designers and educators. So this is going to be a case study of our own project, so you guys can see how we've gone from where we were 9 months ago to where we are now. Yeah. And I also want to just throw it out there that I volunteered at this festival last year, and so in a couple of months, you can really make some change and you can do something and get yourself on this stage, and that's what we hope to inspire other people to do.
And, so we debuted neurospeculative Afrofeminism at Sundance in January, and then we were fortunate enough to go to South by Southwest, and we're just coming off of showing this piece at Tribeca. So we've been able to get a lot of feedback that relates directly to the messages that we're trying to tell through VR, through speculative design thinking, and through research.
And through looking at problems and coming from a multidisciplinary approach. There's many issues that need to be tackled and that need to be addressed, and we wanted to specifically look at the digital and technological discrimination that we have felt and that we've experienced as women who are of color, as well as I'm a structural engineer, Ashley's a cell and molecular biologist, and so we started reading some papers and books and reaching out and seeing what other people are talking about, and we happened upon one paper called Does Technology Have a Race? And we started speaking with Stephanie Dinkins, who's looking at BINA 48 and what algorithmic bias is, what conscious bias is, what unconscious bias is, and how can we really dig deep and kind of start to dismantle these structures.
And Dark Matters is a book written about surveillance, and especially how surveillance relates to the Black community and Blackness. And these are two areas where we thought that we could really make a difference in how we are perceiving people who are outside of the dominant power structures, especially in technology, in STEM fields, specifically math, science, and also installation art.
And emerging technology. Virtual reality. We're trying to answer the question of where do we fit in these places, and beside ourselves, who else is going to fight for us to be there? Because we are the communities that are most impacted, and we want to be allies of those communities. So those are communities of color, displaced and stateless people, immigrants, queer, gender, non-conforming, non-binary, and cyber-womanism.
So this inclusive womanism, what does it mean to be a woman in our current society?
And what we found in doing our research is that we are afraid of what we don't know. And so we're trying to address that from the moment you look at our project and then all of the aspects of our project. So our project is even called neurospeculative Afrofeminism.
And we wanted to play with these disparate ideas of what it means to be a Black woman in a space of technology, specifically thinking about the future evolution of our brains. And if we can tell a multi-layered story that really projects us into this future, and we're really inspired by the Afrofuturism movement, and so a lot of our design decisions, a lot of the stories that we tell, a lot of our perceptions are based on that.
But in order to combat those things that we don't know, we need to have something that ties us to a familiar space. So we created or recreated a beauty salon into a brain salon. And in this space, we had 3 places. We have a gift shop where you can interact with our products. We have the brain lab, which is usually in the back, and it's where we're talking about cognitive enhancement and cognitive impact, and that's where we're conducting our research. But we put you in this place that is just like a salon that you will sit in, but instead of getting your hair cut, you put on a VR and have a simulation of an optimization therapy.
And we wanted to see if we can use virtual reality as a tool to increase exposure to content created by artists and communities of color, and see if we can use it as a tool to decrease prejudice and bias. And how we're doing that is building out a methodology for studying VR outside of academia and in public spaces.
And we found also that, VR as an emerging technology it can be very jolting because you have this out of head, out of body experience. So when we put you in our physical salon, it represents our digital space so that it's familiar. So you're continuing and transcending your physical built environment into this virtual digital world, yet you're familiar with it and you know where things are, and it's all very mirrored. And so the next thing we're going to talk about is how to do a design intervention. What are the most important aspects of when you want to intervene in disciplines and change things? How can you do that? And we did that first by looking at products. And all of our products, if you're more interested, are available to see and interact with. But we'll explain all of them right now.
So all of our products are highlighting themes of security, protection, visibility, and surveillance, especially as they relate to the Black experience, and specifically in this project, but we plan to look at this in very different iterations as we go. And the first thing we landed on creating was a transparent sunscreen. So often when you buy sunscreen off the shelf, it contains zinc oxide, and you put it on, and especially if you have darker skin, it leaves a white film behind. There are a lot of companies who are thinking about tinted solutions or transparent solutions, but they're a lot more expensive. And it's so often that as women of color, we either have to modify products to fit us or we can't use them. So we really wanted this to be a provocation for designers to really think about the communities who they're designing for, who has access to products, and how are they including them in the design decisions once they're creating something. Next, we wanted to make an earring that was video and audio enabled. There have been a lot of instances of police violence, which this earring was directly inspired by just this past week. And we wanted to create a tool that had video and audio embedded in everyday objects so that people could start recording with the touch of a button and then upload that footage to a database that will then be escalated to the appropriate authorities no matter who they are. And then next, we designed a scarf called Hyperface with a privacy artist, Adam Harvey. That's a counter surveillance tool, so it confuses computer vision algorithms. And do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
And so what this does is it has 1,200 faces in it. This is our first iteration of it, and it is a trigger for OpenCV's facial detection algorithm. And it works very well. You can demo it with your camera or your Snapchat, and it starts to camouflage you. So your face will still be detected, but then all of the other faces on the scarf start popping up with facial detection squares all around them. And then the next product that we created is a symbolic representation of microaggressions and code switching. We created a visor with a dichroic material that reflects one color and lets pass through another. So when you have this on and somebody is aggressive toward you, you can put the visor on and stop the interaction because their being gets reflected back to them and their malicious gaze or their attitude. And then the last product that we created are called the transcranial electrodes. They're the Octavia electrodes.
So this is a reimagination of a technology that exists that is a very hot topic in the biohacking and quantified self communities, where people are using a technique called transcranial stimulation to see if they can get themselves into hyper-focused or flow states where you're able to focus on a task and remember information more readily. So in a way, it's a tool that might optimize the brain. But the problem is that if you have a lot of hair or textured hair or locks or braids, you can't really use it. So we were like, well, this is something that we're interested in, and if we wanted to recreate this as something that we could use, how do we do that? So we were like, let's embed it in hair extensions and you know, see what that would look like if you go into a familiar space to have this technique done. So
you can access it with braiding techniques.
Exactly.
And then what we're doing is we're using this product instead of actually like sending electricity to your brain, we're simulating that in virtual reality. So we're creating a neurocosmetology lab where Brooks and Naima, our protagonists, are the owners and inventors of this technology, and you arrive for a optimization session.
See if we can figure out a way to create a new Black American mythology in VR, and doing that in a way that really uplifts and gets people to think critically about who they are and their place in the future.
Especially in these emerging technologies. We saw that, you know, in product design, there wasn't enough representation. In virtual reality, there wasn't enough representation. And as scientists and engineers, those are the fields that we're familiar with, there also isn't enough representation. And we need to be the ones who are talking about this. So we started building spaces. We started building these familiar salons in these film festivals, and then also taking it to schools and engaging with communities. We became the translators. We became the people that were going between the institutions and the industry, talking about themes that are relevant and important to us.
And seeing if in building trust and creating a safe space to talk about issues that we typically don't want to talk about, if that somehow will push us towards a future where we all are granted access.
So this is an image of our experience at Tribeca. And as Ashley was saying, it is a lot about building trust. We're talking about issues that a lot of people don't want to talk about, and we're constantly having to defend our role in the project and our right to be talking about these things. And once you see us as humans, you can understand that we're trying to make this space, this new space that younger generations are going to be designing for and designing in, a safe space for them. So we're trying to constantly ignite the community. We're trying to keep and continue our connections with them. We're trying to inspire young people so that they can start putting themselves into these spaces. And once we do this kind of intervention and implementation, really getting their feedback and understanding how are they engaging and what is the best way. So this is
an image of one of the build-outs that we did at South by Southwest, and we had a lot of young people coming in to do it that had never done VR before. This was their first introduction to it, and to see the impact that it had on them and encouraged them to think about either becoming content creators or seeing virtual reality as something that they have their stories told in.
So we'll go pretty quickly because we have only a couple minutes, but We really want you guys to think about repurposing spaces. What spaces are you a part of that could be used in different ways? Do you know museums or galleries, sports places, nature, and what is your headquarters and your offices? What are they doing? Can you bring the community in and start do you guys have technology that you're developing? Can you train the people inside your community? Because you can't divorce the people that you live with from the content and the work that you're doing. And this is an example of a repurposed space. If any of you guys are familiar with the Stony Island Arts Bank in Chicago, it was an old bank that has been purchased by Theaster Gates, an artist, and along with the Johnson's publication company, they've created a space for community engagement, for arts, for music, for literature. And
we were fortunate enough to be able to show an SAF there. So this is a library that contains all of the references from the Johnson Foundation, who, I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but they are the publishing house that produced Ebony and Jet magazine. So there is archives upon archives there, and we were able to show NSAF there, and a lot of people from the community came in, and we had a really, really good discussion about emerging technology and art and literature, and it was really nice to see that a lot of students from the School of the Art Institute came, a lot of people who just enjoy the arts and patron the space often because it's free to go, and then a lot of children were there as well.
And we also, during this time, we gave a workshop about what VR is, how to build in VR, start thinking about virtual reality, because this is an emerging medium, and we can tell our stories, and we should be telling our stories in here. We also went to the School of the Art Institute and talked to young people who are, animators and creators, and started, encouraging them to speak about things that affect them. And everyone's been really, really receptive to it. And I think that's through the idea, or the fact that we've cross-pollinated and we've taken a multidisciplinary approach.
Right, so we're using art as an entry point to talk about science and technology and retention in these spaces, because we found that it's not enough to be the only one. And if you're the only one, you have to hold the door open so that someone else can also come in and be a part of, the things that are affecting them in a lot of ways.
And if you are one of many, maybe it's time to give your seat up if you're talking about the same things so that you can learn and expose more people to new ideas. This was in San Francisco State University. We were able to meet with biologists, with film students, ethnic studies groups, and we brought them all together in this one room and kind of spoke similarly about the project, as well as gave them the VR experience. So we find that it's super important to create a design curriculum and to ask difficult questions. What are the tools that we are creating, and how can we address real existing problems? How can we take a human design-centered approach using new technology and new media? What other groups are doing this? What kind of case studies can we make? And what kind of focus groups can we develop so that we can create more engaging, more meaningful work? And why isn't the current model working? So this is a focus group that we did at New Inc., where we're residents in New York, and we got together with a bunch of women and asked them how they wanted to engage with this and how they felt their role in technology and in the future was being represented, and how could we help augment that.
And this project all started because we're very interested in neuroscience, and we were looking for mentors in the field who, represented who we were. And so we found one woman, Dr. Joanne Berger-Sweeney, who was going to give up and give a talk to her colleagues, and she opens her TED Talk with, "Where are all the black women in neuroscience?" And you can transpose that sentence across a number of fields. And in order to begin addressing those questions and really answering them and thinking through them, it takes putting yourself out there and creating the work that you want to see.
We also think it's super important to invite the children. They are the ones who will be shaping our world in the future, and so they need to be part of the conversation as we create meaningful work. They're going to be choosing their own identity, and we need to allow them to choose whatever identity they want, and get the feedback from them. So we did get a couple kids at Sundance and at South by. One of the most interesting experiences for me at Sundance was there's a little boy who is running around saying neurospeculative Afrofeminism. And if that becomes part of his vernacular at 6 or 7 years old, how is his, what is the long-term return on investment for this kind of work?
Yeah, so he sees the characters that we've made as something that he could look up to, even if they didn't look like him. So we're trying to broaden people's perceptions and their horizons.
And then this is our call to action to you guys as designers, as techies, whatever you are, to do something about the situation that we're in. And we want you to really go beyond what would be easy or what would be comfortable. This is difficult work.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. And we've seen a lot of not so difficult work. And we need to push ourselves to make things that move us. And we weren't being moved as scientists and engineers, nor as artists, so we had to create something ourselves.
But also we talk a lot about these buzzwords, diversity and inclusion. And, we talk about it, but how are we implementing and thinking through what will work and what actually doesn't work, and how we can move beyond this conversation and see what people are capable of.
And this is an example of how things don't work. On the right, we have an individual who can fit a headset on his head quite easily, and on the left, we have somebody who has a lot of hair, and it isn't easy. And why isn't it easy? The designers aren't looking outside of their frame of reference, their body, their experience. And so we're creating more products that don't fit all of us. And how can we subvert that?
So how do we move beyond this fear?
Yeah.
That's a call to action. Thinking through, how can you every day move beyond your comfort zone and the things that, you may be afraid of.
And so that's where we as a team came together. This is our core team. Nitsan is from Israel. I'm from San Francisco, and my father's Mexican. Ashley is from Los Angeles. Ece is from Turkey. And we're trying to address large issues from a global perspective. And we've gotten a lot of slack for this, but it's still something that needs to be addressed, and it's still something that we're going to fight for, and we want to do it together, because in the end, we're all friends, and we all support each other, and we want to see everyone grow.
But also beyond that, some iteration of this othering exists throughout the world. So here it may look one way, in Germany it may look another way, in Turkey it may look something like something else. But at the core, it's all the same. We've forgotten that we're all humans. We all have the same experiences. And how can we move beyond our own prejudice and bias, whether it's conscious or unconscious, to see that?
So here are some other critical issues we'd like to bring our attention to, and that we'd like to challenge you guys to be addressing. So that's the assault to our environment, the defunding of arts in our education systems, the rich and poor divide, and reimagining low-income housing, drug addictions, throwaway labor, and the prison industrial complex. And so this project is for all of the boys
and women
and
girls,
that we're losing.
everyone.
This is for our mothers. This is for our planet. And we really hope that we can inspire you guys to do something and change the world. So thank you.